The Green New Deal has been unveiled. On Thursday, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the freshman Democrat from New York's 14th Congressional District, she released a proposal titled, quote, "Recognizing the Duty of the Federal Government to Create a Green New Deal." So Senator Ed Markey, who worked with Representative Ocasio-Cortez reportedly for about a month on this initiative, he's going to introduce a companion proposal in the Senate. And I believe the original, this original proposal in the House at least has over 60 different co-sponsors.
Today is the day that we truly embark on a comprehensive agenda of economic, social, and racial justice in the United States of America. That's what this agenda is all about. Because climate change and our environmental challenges are one of the biggest existential threats to our way of life, not just as a nation, but as a world. And in order for us to combat that threat, we must be as ambitious and innovative in our solution as possible. So what we are doing today and in introducing these resolutions here today is that it's not a bill, it is a resolution. And what this resolution is doing is saying this is our first step. Our first step is to define the problem and define the scope of the solution. And so we're here to say that small, incremental policy solutions are not enough. They can be part of a solution, but they are not the solution unto itself. There is no justice and there is no combating climate change without addressing what has happened to indigenous communities. That means that there is no fixing our economy without addressing the racial wealth gap. That means that we are not going to transition to renewable energies without also transitioning frontline communities and coal communities into economic opportunity as well. That is what this is about. It is comprehensive, it is thoughtful, it is compassionate, and it is extremely economically strategic as well. Today is also the day that we choose to assert ourselves as a global leader in transitioning to 100% renewable energy and charting that path. That means that we are not going to peg ourselves by the lowest standards of other nations. It doesn't mean that we're going to say, what about them? They're not doing it. What about them? They're not doing it. Why should we? We should do it because we should lead. We should do it because that is what this nation is about. We should do it because we are a country founded on ideals of a culture that is innovative, that cares for our brothers and sisters across this country. We should do it because we are an example to the world. That is why we should do it.
I like what she had to say there. And again, she said it with strength. She said it with conviction. She said it. She just said what needed to be said. I like the last bit of that video or that clip where she says, we're not going to wait for other countries to make action. No, we should do it because we know it's the right damn thing to do. So I know people that are on the other side of this argument and trying to push back on this always say, well, hey, you know, look at China. You know, they're the world's biggest emitter of carbon dioxide right now. Right now, not historically, but right now, yeah. But why are we looking at what China's doing? Why are we looking at what the UK is doing? Why are we looking at what France is doing? Why don't we pay attention to what we're doing right here? You know, we are supposed to be the leader of the free world.
And if we kind of tout ourselves as being, you know, trendsetters, then why not go forth with new innovation that puts us ahead of everybody? Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, and you talked about people on the other side of this, namely conservative, namely Republicans, the opposition party, and even some Democrats. Now, mm-hmm. they're not as kind of rhetorically against her as, let's say, like Fox News is. But, you know, if this message about making America great again is going to actually hold water, they would actually kind of be for something like this. Mm-hmm. Because how can we actually make the United States a great whatever if we do not go forward with new innovations and get ahead of the game on this? You see what I'm saying? So if people were actually about making America great, they would actually be for something like this. And one thing that I know people will definitely push back on is her talking about closing the racial wealth gap. Mm-hmm. she definitely get pushback from conservatives on that. But I don't understand why when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or any other progressive brings up closing the racial wealth gap, they get so indignant, even though Trump touts that he's been doing that. He did that at the State of the Union.
Talking about the unemployment
Talking about the unemployment rate. So I'm just beside myself every time a progressive, someone on the left wants to highlight certain demographics that kind of need to be focused on as far as closing the racial wealth gap, but then somehow don't see the irony when Trump, very wealthy, very powerful and privileged white dude, somehow takes credit for closing that racial wealth gap.
Well, the motivations are different. See, they do it to pander. They're being disingenuous. So she's not. She actually wants to do something.
Yeah, I'm not just talking about, like, I guess, rhetoric coming from leaders. I'm talking about the response from certain people.
Oh, I know.
You see what I'm saying?
But they'd be disingenuous as well.
That's true.
Yeah. So, look, this makes good on a significant focus of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign. She talked a lot about the economy. She talked a lot about climate change when she was running for that position that she has right now. So when you get into a little bit of the proposal, it highlights how the United States has played a tremendous role in climate change and how we should be the leading force in fixing things. So this is one portion of this proposal. It says, whereas because the United States has historically been responsible for a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gas emissions, having emitted 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions through 2014, and has a high technological capacity, the United States must take a leading role in reducing emissions through economic transformation. So, I mean, again, that's the most common sense thing in the world. The pushback is that Republicans and conservatives, they always talk about the effect it's going to have on the economy and on jobs and on, I guess, cost. So I get that. I get that it's a concern. I totally get that it's a concern. But when you have that juxtaposed to the planet being not habitable, something's got to happen. Like, you're going to be faced with the reality that something must change at some point. It's coming. Okay? It's coming. You can't just close your eyes to it.
And, like, I guess you can't talk about climate change and kind of job loss in regard to not, I guess, being reliant upon fossil fuels.
Right.
And the jobs that creates. But what about, you know, how many jobs are going to be lost if climate change actually, becomes a reality? Right. What about the job losses there?
What about the real estate that will be destroyed?
What about, environmental changes in the ocean and whatnot that affects the different life forms there, which will then affect food supply.
Exactly.
So yes, it's going to definitely affect the economy on the back end.
So it's not, you can't just, again, you can't turn a blind eye to it because it's already having effects and it will continue having devastating effects. You can't just ignore it. This is a little bit more about the proposal. This is from The Hill. The proposal says, the proposal says that accomplishing the plan would take a 10-year national mobilization and would include resilience building, a 100% renewable energy driven power grid, updating smart power grids, and increasing building energy efficiency. Buried in the resolution is also a commitment that all future infrastructure bills would specifically address climate change. Going on to HuffPost, says a section outlining guidelines for future Green New Deal bills reads like a laundry list of populist policies, including everything from a ramped up antitrust enforcement, ensuring a commercial environment where every business person is free from unfair competition and domination by monopolies, to a vastly expanded social safety net, providing all people of the United States high quality health care, affordable, safe, and adequate housing, economic security, and access to clean water, air, and healthy and affordable food and nature. So that's pretty extensive. One thing that the one thing that the proposal does not do explicitly is call for an end to fossil fuel production or technology. It doesn't call for an immediate end to it. So that's where some people that were very excited about this Green New Deal and actually having something to grab a hold of, that's where they are, they're passing on this, because again, it's not explicit that fossil fuel technology will end completely right away.
If you're going to do that, it would have to be, I guess, tiered. It would have to be. You can't just say, okay, we're going to just cut that off.
You can't.
You can't.
Not the way this environment or the way this economy works.
Not the way the economy works, and not the way the infrastructure is set up. I think that's that's the main hurdle.
Yeah.
So you have all this infrastructure that essentially will have to be repurposed or recycled. So you can't just say, okay, at this point we're going to stop.
Do we have the infrastructure to replace it as of right now?
And that's the thing. And we can't, I guess, get rid of that, infrastructure until
there is
something else replaces it.
Exactly. So, I mean, I understand. I really do. I know that people that really believe in this idea, the Green New Deal, about, look, us transforming our infrastructure. We have to go to renewable energy. We have to do something. No more of this fossil fuel technology. I feel you. I definitely feel you. But it is not possible for you to just flick a switch. It's just not possible to do that. Now, I think what this does do, though, is if this is actually implemented, it would definitely put us on the right track. And yes, we would get to a place where fossil fuel technology is phased out completely. So I like that aspect of it. I just don't think, you can call for an explicit end to fossil fuel technology as of right now. What's the plan there? They're not even sure that, within 10 years they could close all the nuclear plants. So it is.
And honestly, if you think about it, transitioning, it will create jobs.
Yeah.
Not just create jobs on the back end if we do transition, but it will definitely create jobs during the transition, because there's going to be work that has to be done to kind of break down all of these areas where fossil fuels are being used and being produced and being procured, all of that stuff. So there's going to be jobs created.
Yeah.
To even break this system down.
But hey, look at it like this, right? Jobs will be lost. Now, again, there will be jobs gained as well because of the transformation, the transition to renewable energy, right? So is it going to be the same amount of jobs? I think at this point, that's anyone's guess. You could say yes, you could say no, right? I don't think anybody has a solid grasp on that as of right now. But how do most people feel about the private health industry? Do we care if those jobs are lost?
That's interesting. That's an interesting comparison, because if we do kind of get rid of insurance, or the insurance industry, or most of it, by implementing a Medicare for all or a single payer system, there are going to be jobs lost.
Yes, many jobs.
Many jobs.
And do we care about that? We know that there are many people. I used to work in the insurance field. Well, I kind of still do, but still, I used to work at a building, pushing paper, doing claims, or processing claims. So I was in that whole system. That job would be lost. Poor me, poor a lot of people that work in that industry, but...
So basically, all you're kind of pointing to is, no matter, where we are as a society, what time period we're in, we're always transitioning from something.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't stay the same.
Right.
Mugs aren't petitioning for Blockbuster to stay open. When Netflix came around...
There were many jobs lost.
There were many jobs lost. Right?